Hey everybody, welcome back to Noggin Notes. I am your host, Jake Wiskershin, and this podcast is just me. I'm going solo talking about why I believe 2020 isn't necessarily all bad. You may think, well, yeah, duh, nothing is all of anything. You know, we talk a lot about binary language, all or nothing, black or white, great and terrible. But in this case, I think that there's been this disturbing trend of people believing that the entire year has been awful and they can't wait for it to end. And it's like, yeah, awful things happen in other years too. And maybe we need to be a little more mindful about for that which we're grateful, as well as some other stuff that maybe we've overlooked and taken for granted. So this is my opinion on that, and feel free to disagree. You can email us at info@nogginnotes.com or info@zephyrwellness.org, and we'll be happy to tell you that you're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I would never do that. Please give us your feedback, and in the meantime, maybe consider closing out the year on a positive note. In the meantime, let's thank our sponsors. As always, audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. If you want to go and get a free 30-day trial on us, you can download some audio content and keep whatever it is that you download. You get one book or one script or whatever it is that you download, and you keep that even if you cancel your trial. So audibletrial.com/nogginnotes for your free 30-day trial. Get in touch with their completely unmatched selection of audio content and plug it in wherever you like to absorb your audio content. This being audio content that we know you're absorbing, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be listening right now. Wherever you get this, maybe consider enhancing it and augmenting it with Audible. Also, Zephyr Wellness, the company that I co-own with Lindsay Bell in Reno, Nevada, and Sparks, Nevada. We do a lot in the community, and we're very proud of that. Check out zephyrwellness.org. And consider supporting some of the things we support, like Walk the Talk America. For a free and anonymous mental health screening, go to wtta.org/love and take a free and anonymous mental health screening to check in on your mental well-being and see where you stand. Thanks as always for listening. Enjoy the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back. Jake Wiskershin, Zephyr Wellness, and this might just be a Noggin Notes podcast too, so I'll mention Noggin Notes. It's just me opining, and for the first time I'm doing a little simulcast with the video and the audio. And I want to introduce a concept that may make some people's heads pop, but that concept is that 2020 actually hasn't been quite so bad. I know it's popular convention, and the narrative suggests that 2020 is the worst year ever or whatever. But there's been a lot of years in human existence, and I'm not sure that 2020 is the worst. I don't even know if it makes the top 1,500 years that have ever existed. But I'm not a historian. I'm a psychotherapist, and I do, counseling and talk therapy for a living. And from my perspective, as a guy who studies this stuff and works with couples and families and children, I think that maybe there's some joy to be found among the wreckage. And certainly there's been a lot of wreckage, a lot of stuff that we're not accustomed to, a lot of stuff that our individual expectations, had for ourselves that didn't get aligned with reality. And when our expectations are not aligned with reality, and reality fails to fulfill our expectations, we get disappointment. We get a lot of sadness. And when we experience sadness, if we're not used to tolerating that emotion, we sometimes reach for anger or contempt, or we rationalize and we explain away, or we blame shift. And blame shifting is where we offload the person or the people or the thing that's responsible onto something else to make it make more sense in our head. But I'd like to get away from all that for a second and just maybe for the next few minutes reflect on things that have been positive. And these are anecdotal. They affect my life, and maybe they affect yours too. So I by no means want to suggest that everybody's experiencing the same thing. If you've listened to me talk on YouTube or on the podcast for any length of time, you know that my particular framework on how we live life should not be predicated on experiential comparison, because experiences can always vary. I mean, we can watch the same ball game together and have very, very different emotional experiences, but the emotions beneath those experiences are absolutely common among humans. And I also happen to believe, studying this stuff for some time, that if we direct our attention to something else, we're going to generate a mood or some emotions that are different perhaps than what the environment is presenting to us. And that's what we call in my world a reframe. So if something negative happens to me, I can reframe that and say, yeah, this sucked, and alongside the suck, I can identify something positive to gain from this, a growth experience perhaps, or maybe somebody had some new perspective, or we got to accomplish something different that we didn't know we were capable of. So some of these things that have experienced, that we've experienced throughout 2020 might include the traditional occurrences that occur through any year, and those would be births, of which I've known 3 in my personal life. And when we welcome new life into the world, I think that's really very cool, and it should be celebrated. I certainly am happy to welcome new babies and provide them some guidance and leadership, and encourage the same in their parents. Yes, there's been a lot of death, and we want to acknowledge that, and we want to mourn it and grieve it appropriately. And simultaneously, we don't want to let the sadness of losing someone, say, to COVID, overwhelm or invalidate the experience of bringing new life into the world. And I think it's beautiful that we have new babies coming into the world. Something else that has happened this year, I've been a wedding officiant for 5 or 6 years now, 7 years maybe, and I've married several couples. And in this year, for the first time ever, I got to marry 2 different couples in the same year. And I think that's really special too, and it's very precious. One of those couples got married, and they took advantage of the COVID restrictions, and when the restrictions were lifted back in May and June, they rapidly scheduled their wedding, asked me to officiate, and we did it up at Lake Tahoe, and it was very beautiful. The second one occurred in the backyard of my next-door neighbor's house, and I was absolutely overwhelmed with the idea that I would be selected to officiate this wedding, which had to occur in Nevada so that they could be officially legally married, because the next celebration will be in Mexico in a year or so. And I think that's really, really cool. So there's been some celebrations materially, some celebrations that we can put our finger on and make sure that we're paying honor to those processes and not just like throwing our hands in the air and saying, everything sucks, because everything doesn't suck. Everything is one of those extreme language words that we want to try to avoid, at least in my profession, because extreme language invites in an opportunity for binary thinking, and binary thinking is when we go into the either-or mindset, all or nothing, great or terrible, black or white. And I've got a different video about this on YouTube about how binary thinking begets anxiety, because you're essentially trapped between 2 extremes. And unfortunately, through the course of our 2020, some of the political chaos and civil unrest that has befallen our country and across the world has pushed people into extremes, and extremes don't benefit humanity at all. They promote tribalism, and unless you're in one camp, then you're not like the other camp, and so forth. And if you can't get along, then you must fight. And I take issue with that. I don't think you must fight. I don't think you must be in one camp. I think the concept of intersectionality is a good thing. I don't necessarily think that intersectionality, when you're claiming victim status, is a good thing. I think there's a difference between being a victim and playing a victim, meaning carrying the victim status forward, such that you can't ever grant grace or forgiveness. I think that's probably detrimental to our human relationships. But what I'm trying to do is pull people out of those encampments and bring them more toward the center, and realize that we have more to celebrate and be thankful for than probably we give proper credit. Some other great things that have come out of this is that even though we've been isolated through the lockdowns and so forth, we've actually been able to foster and promote and develop some different relationships that never may have existed had it not been for that. So think about our previous world, wherein we had to take meetings, in person, usually, in a conference room or over lunches or coffees or whatever. And now we get to do it over Zoom. And I say get to very, very specifically and purposefully, because Zoom was that thing that was kind of thought about as an after effect. And sure, pick Microsoft Teams or any of your favorite online platforms. But the point is that through telecommunication, we've now been able to connect with people in a different way that we never have before. And through that, I have found some really cool opportunities to promote and develop some really neat initiatives that are helping folks. Sure, we're locked away and we're isolated and we have to wear masks and separate and so forth. But what we're getting instead is some different ways of promoting what we're doing, and that actually inspires some ingenuity. And that's one of the other great benefits of this pandemic, is that it's compelled people like my profession, the profession of psychotherapy and counseling, to become competent at telehealth. A lot of us in this realm have been suspicious of telehealth, thinking almost like it's something of the occult or to be avoided. That there's risks to hacking and privacy issues and all that stuff. And what do we do if somebody's in a crisis in the middle of a session, and how do we respond? Well, what we've learned is that we need to take adequate account for where the person is and what their address is and what their local resources are, so that we can gently shepherd them through whatever they may be going through in the middle of the session. And I think that's really, really cool. Telehealth is here to stay. And in a humble brag, back in March, I predicted that this would be one of the many silver linings to emerge from the pandemic and from the lockdowns. I thought that it would be a good thing that counselors would be forced to become good at executing talk therapy through a virtual platform. And as it turns out, we have become very, very good at that. And while some people lament this change and they long for the days of yesteryear when we could sit in the same office and feel each other's energy in person, and there is some merit to that, I think what it's offered us is the opportunity to break down some barriers and promote more care access, not just geographically to rural areas like in Nevada. I'm in northern Nevada, and I'm in an urban community in the Truckee Meadows, Reno Sparks area. But Nevada is comprised of about 110,000 square miles, about 88,000 square miles of which are not urban. And those people way out in the distant communities don't have access to things like mental health counseling. So I'm very proud that we've established this and that we've trained up our clinicians to be competent in this area now, so that people in the remote outlying areas can now receive the counseling that maybe they couldn't before, or maybe they were suspicious of, or maybe we were hesitant to deliver. So I think that's really cool, and I think that's here to stay. And it's not just, like I said, it's not just geographic distance. Now, we can do telehealth on the side of the road. You whip out your phone, get on the Zoom meeting, pull over, and have your appointment. If you're running late, if there's inclement weather, you can stay home. Obviously, illness allows for this to happen. People who have to get their kid from school, typically they might have to go home, get changed, shovel some food down their kid's throat, and then come to the office. Now they don't have to do that anymore. They can just go home and say, hey, we're not going to make it on time or in person. And they don't have to cancel their appointment. They don't have to skip their care, which I think is super, super cool. One of the really cool things that's emerged also is the advent of really aggressive research into disease study. I'm not an immunologist, and I don't know how immunology works. I have some rudimentary knowledge from my high school biology class and some stuff I took in college, but what I'm seeing is very, very encouraging about globally. We've got doctors and PhD level people who are studying this stuff in a more